Sure. So because you've got the physical factors, and you may be under, if you have a chemical imbalance, for example, maybe you can't really understand what's going on, or you've got those
Yes.
emotional fears. It's, trying to figure out which of those the problem is, and sometimes it's multiple of problems, multiple situations. And I can see the magnitude of it, really, as far as really trying to eat the elephant, so to speak,
Yeah,
and
true. And
find
it's
out.
just, it's just really that there's so many things going on there. And I see really the important part there as well is that often people have, I mentioned fear earlier, and of course it's the fear of failure, but I see even more the fear of success. Because
Mm,
sometimes people, and they don't realize that, and that's why we have to go back into their childhood, sometimes it's really that they don't know what's going to expect them on the other side. And so they know that they might be overweight, or they have an issue, or they have health issues. They don't know what else would be out there. And change is always putting us in fear, even if it might be better. But it might be then things go so well, and we might feel too successful, and maybe we cannot fit in our lives anymore because
mm,
things are suddenly working for us. Or it might be that suddenly our friends are jealous because we lost that weight, or whatever it is. So that's also, and of course,
in control of it, and is, healed from it, so to speak. Do you find that some people have relapses back into emotional eating at some point?
um, it depends. Usually when they work with me, they don't, because I really, I don't want to say they don't, because we all do. I'm sorry, I just actually want to go back. They might have, there will always be relapse. There will always be a moment we go to that party and we have, there's the buffet and we eat some unhealthy options. But what they learn actually is that if they perhaps skip their healthy eating habits suddenly, and eat unhealthy, that they don't beat themselves up and they get back on the horse. They've
Mm,
learned that it is okay, and they don't, it's okay not to eat healthy. They've learned to plan for eating unhealthy. That's one skill I really love teaching my clients, is plan.
mm,
And you go to that party, plan to eat something, there. Don't go only for the carrots or so, because eventually, you'll come home and you will eat the whole whatever cupboard. So it's really about the planning and accepting that there will be moments. But what is definitely I'm seeing when clients work with me, I help them to implement long-term habits, and the understanding to dissociate the food from the emotions, so they don't need the food to make them happy anymore. And that changes completely then the thinking. So it's absolutely okay when when they eat something unhealthy.
sure,
Does that make
sure.
sense?
Just kind of give themselves permission to do that, or to have a splurge day or a cheat day, whatever you choose to call it. So now, what's kind of sets the spark in motion? For example, what helps them to kind of decide that, okay, enough is enough of my trying all these different diets or things like that. I really want something that's going to work. What what usually kind of sets those processes in motion, so to speak?
Right. When I see, before seeing clients, I usually have a free consultation with them. And I go very deeply into finding exactly that out, because I think that's very important. They've tried everything, so it's definitely it needs to set the spark, as you say, or spark off the thing. So the one thing I always make sure they understand and they get clear on is are their goals. Now, goals, just usually people say, "Oh, I want to lose 20 or 30 pounds," or whatever it is. But getting super clear on why do you want to lose this 20 or 30 pounds? What is it really that makes you happy there? Is it because you want to play with your grandchildren? I had one client, she said, she cannot bend down because of the weight, or that she had pain in her knees, so it's difficult for her to get down on her knees, and her daughter was about to get a child, so she wanted to play. So these kind of things are very, very important, because that eventually at your low moments, and there will be, of course, and I really believe willpower is not a thing, because I always say you have a bag of willpower and you take it out and eventually the bag is empty. So you need to really work on other things, and that's where the habits, accountability, all these things come in. So getting super clear on your goal and making it really something achievable. So that, I think, is the first point to start. And then the next point is really to have a plan, get really clear on how you're going to go about it, and have a bigger plan, and then cut it down. So eventually every day in the morning, you actually, what you have to do, or what you want to do rather, because that's really, really important to keep you going after.
Sure. So you're kind of setting habits in motion, kind of really breaking it down into those tiny steps, so to speak.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So now, do you can they walk through that process on their own? What success stories have you had? Whether, obviously working with you, but are there others who have chosen, who have maybe overcome emotional eating in a different way, or perhaps you've heard from them, long after you've ended the client relationship?
Yes. Look, I mean, of course, there are always people, that can do it on their own. There are people who prefer doing it with a coach like me. What probably the difference is, as I said earlier, I can give a blueprint to somebody and say, just follow it. But the issue is really keeping on track, keeping the motivation. I think that's the biggest part, and especially with emotional eating. People are triggered by emotions, and overcoming those needs really a lot of implementation, reviewing what works, what doesn't work, and implementing those habits take time. I mean, I'm sure you have some habits you implemented, right?
Absolutely.
Now, how long did it take you?
It took several weeks, if not more. Depends on the habit, but yes, it takes time to, remember to have those triggers to, to do whatever it is, or to not do. You come home, you have a bad day, don't eat the dish of ice cream. Instead, go and, talk with a friend, or some other avenue. So you've got a lot of different ways. So are there any success stories that stand out to you as far as
working with me?
With work, yes, working with you, that you've seen, maybe you've seen a 180-degree turnaround, or you've seen,
Yes,
some
plenty.
progress made, or something else, if there's anything in particular that stands
Plenty.
out.
I think there's several clients. There's so many, actually. Let me think of one. There are, because I mean, every client has different stories, and some have huge amount of weight loss. But most of my clients, they have a shift in their mindset, and that is for me far more important, because then I know they can keep it up, for the rest of their lives, and that's for me so important. I want to really give people the tools so they can use it long after they worked with me. The one woman probably, and it has been some while ago, was the most amazing. She came, it was a 68-year-old woman, I think. She had been eating her whole life unhealthy. She was not very happy in her life and all that. And she came, and we put together a personalized nutrition plan. Now, she came to me, she was overweight, she had severe arthritis. She could hardly move her hands and her knees.
Oh
She could
my.
not exercise because of that. She had high blood pressure. She was diabetic, borderline diabetic. She had something else. She was tired all the time, and she had also really, really bad headaches, migraine headaches. Now she started really embracing the way we implemented for her, and it was a slow process. Step by step, we changed the food habits. We added also some spiritual changes into her life, some practices, some exercises, lifestyle. Oh yeah, and she slept only 4 hours a night, right?
Oh
She couldn't
my.
sleep more. She just didn't. And 2-3 weeks later only, starting working with me, she started changing. First of all, she started sleeping 8 hours, which was amazing. She was so surprised. Her pain disappeared completely. She lost
Wow.
weight, obviously. She could discontinue immediately her diabetes medication. Now, that's not me who decides. Obviously, that was her doctor.
Sure.
And then a little bit later, I know she also could discontinue her high blood pressure. And I think she took something else for cholesterol or so that she stopped as well. She came with me literally with a shopping bag of chronic medication, which she was taking
Wow.
today. And I know after, she had to still to take 2 or 3 after, but it was very little. And I know I recently spoke with her niece, who worked with me also at the time, and she told me she's not granny, but her aunt was doing really, really well.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's
Yeah.
what I would call a 180-degree turnaround
Oh, yeah.
from.
Amazing. And she embraced this kind of new eating, and when she understood what it's all about and all that, she really embraced that. It was beautiful to see. I think that was sort of the nice, but there's so many other moments actually. I mean, people who really have those emotional eating issues, like I mentioned earlier, one of my clients, he had thought he needed food to make him happy, and he realized he doesn't need it anymore.
Yeah.
And he was, looking internally for happiness.
Sure, definitely. Now, a lot of times, emotional eating has different stigmas or something like that. You hear about people going for the sweets or the chocolate, a lot of the carbs, things like that. Are there, why is that? Do some people, you don't often hear about people go in for the celery or the avocado or some other thing. Why is that? Why do you feel that that's people gravitate to sweets or other carbs or certain foods in general?
Great question. Goes a little bit back to our past with what we associate the food. If it is, for example, that our parents, I just go back to the sample I gave earlier. If it is that our parents set us in front of TV with a big bag of chips, we probably will crave more salty, crunchy food. If it was more the ice cream or the chocolate in our childhood, that's probably a little bit more there.
Mm.
But having said that, what they all have more or less in common is, in general, is the carbohydrates, is the texture, it's the triggers, and it's definitely very often the sugar involved. Now, sugar is not necessarily only the sugar, the sweet food, because very often the carbohydrates in pasta, in pizza, for example, is sugar. For our body, it's seen like sugar. And what
Sure.
happens there as well is, and that's really what I'm super passionate, besides the emotional side, is the digestive side. Now, the digestive side is that our gut is, as we all know, and we've learned more and more recently in many studies, and more proof, is, we have the gut bacteria in our gut, and we have the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. Now, the bad bacteria is fed by the unhealthy food, right? Sugar, the trans fats, all these kind of
Sure.
things is really, the bad bacteria love that. And of course, they're eating that to stay alive. And they make you actually crave those foods. Now, the trick there is to eventually get to a stage where the bad bacteria diminish and the good bacteria increase, because the good bacteria, they need like probiotic food, fiber, all these kind of good things. So you want eventually to get that change the balance of those bacteria in your gut, and that is super important. And just perhaps also to put it quickly into context, you have the serotonin. 70% of serotonin is actually fabricated in our gut. Now, if you have unhealthy gut, of course, the serotonin doesn't work the way it should be working. And that leads to unhappiness, anxiety, and of course is affecting our neurotransmitters, and with that our hormones.
Okay, so interesting. So
Mm-hmm.
if you, well, I'm sure very few children grew up, put in front of the TV with an avocado or with a piece of celery or other things. So it kind of depends. It kind of boils down to those connections, I think, as you said.
True, but for example, if somebody really craves crunchy food like chips, crisps, or all this kind of thing, a celery might actually work for them.
Okay.
Okay, because it's crunchy. So I don't say it always works, and you probably need to get there, but it might work because the crunchiness might actually work for them. So it's
Okay.
also very often what I like to do, and I'm sure you do that. I know, I know what you're doing, in your courses, and they look wonderful. I actually would love to get cooking with you. But it's definitely also something to find healthy alternatives. One is, of course, to find out what's the origin, what are the issues. But then, when it's the chips, there are healthy chips as well, and I'm sure they will do the trick. So I really love to find with my clients healthier alternatives than what they were using that still gives them satisfaction.
So you kind of start their curiosity, pique their curiosity in terms of the possibilities, and kind of let them run free with trying to find things for themselves.
Yeah. Don't you like that as well? I mean, when you cook with your clients, do that. I love that.
I love it. Yes, as far as what they're discovering, I recommend certain resources, but then they come back and say, "Wow, I found this and that," and hey, did you read that study about this? And just their aha moment, so to speak, as far as hey, I've got a handle on this. I'm running with the ball, and I'm seeing results. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you see that with your clients all the time.
Very
So,
true. And I love sharing nice recipes with them. I have a raw vegan chocolate cake that's absolutely healthy, and when I share with them that they love it, obviously. And they didn't realize before that they can still indulge because very often people come to me and they say, look, I don't want to eat healthy because it takes away my freedom. They don't realize that by eating healthy and planning everything, actually, they have so much more freedom because by not eating healthy, their health is usually diminished, and that's, they take away their own freedom somehow. So by finding something they can really enjoy, they're like, wow, actually, that tastes great. And people cannot imagine that healthy food actually tastes great.
yes, definitely. And just kind of helping them to see the wide range of choices. As as soon as your health starts to diminish, then you're restricted. You've got to, only eat, a certain amount or type of food, and then you're frustrated because that's all you can eat and that's all you think there's out there. But
Yeah.
just kind of uncovering the possibilities. And so that's super, super important, especially with emotional eating. I think once they discover the solution or discover the causes, then they can kind of run with the ball there.
True.
So absolutely. So what is um I I like to focus on what I call positive food experiences, having that relationship with food, having that excitement about mealtime, things of that nature. So, what it does that expression mean to you? Positive food experiences.
For me, one is I love cooking.
Mm-hmm.
But I am somebody, I'm super busy. I run my business and even before. So, I don't have always the time to cook. So for me, having that, making the cooking a joy and finding the balance so it doesn't make you feel overwhelmed or that it's a chore or something like that. I mean, when I was younger, I had my kids and I had to cook every day. And I kind of didn't enjoy it so much, whereas I love cooking for guests. But now I learned, for example, I do a couple of things on the weekend when I have more time, and I do what I call batch cooking. So I plan my week in advance. And that's, by the way, something also, I teach my clients, is really to plan your week in advance and then cook bigger amounts of food, a big pot of soup, or maybe some oven vegetable or whatever it is. And, then I can multi-purpose it during the week. And that I really love doing, get a little bit creative. You have oven baked vegetable, you can put it on top of your salad. You can maybe make a soup out of it or whatever it is, you can combine it with this dish or that dish. So that is for me something, having a good relationship with food starts with the shopping, but with the cooking definitely. So that I would say would be the positive food experience. The other one is definitely to eat mindfully and intuitively,
Mm.
both. And for
Yes.
me, that's something I love. I have a wonderful little ebook actually for my client, or for people who are interested in that. Is, just to realize that food nourishes you. The job of the
Sure.
food is to nourish you. The job of the food is not to make you happy or whatever. It's really to nourish you, beautiful nutrients in there that make you feel alive. So, you give back to the food in a way as well by appreciating it, by being grateful, by noticing it, by smelling, tasting. So sometimes I sit my clients down and I have them taste
Mm-hmm.
and touch food. I mean, most people actually don't know how, a raspberry, how that feels, the texture of them or so, or
Mm.
chewing as well is such an important thing. Most people are with their cell phones there, they're there while they're eating, and I'm guilty as well. I do it sometimes. I'm not perfect, but I try, of course, to most of the time to walk my talk.
That's great. That sounds good. So they're kind of creating those positive food experiences as they discover different foods or different recipes, or, smelling what cilantro smells like, or other herbs or something, other things like that. That's definitely important for the hands-on aspect of it. I love
Have
that.
fun. Have fun with it. Food is amazing. I mean, it's the colors, the tastes, the smells. I personally, I mean, I love just trying out things, but I know not everybody is perhaps that comfortable or so. Or it's not that I'm knowledgeable, but it's just I just enjoy it.
Sure. And it's kind of discovering, what foods, if something looks good at the market, for example, maybe just get that and look up a recipe, being willing to try different things essentially.
True.
So, excellent. So, Andrea, how can people get in contact with you?
But the best way is to go on my website. I'm sure you're going to share the details with everybody. It's wellnessmethods.com. I also will share with you, and that would be great. I spoke earlier about mindful eating. I have a
Mm-hmm.
mindful eating ebook, so I will share
Ah,
that as
great.
well. So it's a little
Excellent.
gift for your listeners if you want to check it out. It's wellnessmethods.com/mindful eating. And that helps you, to practice it a little bit and get a little bit more feeling with it. And I also, if some people are wanting to know more and perhaps dive a little bit deeper, I have a consultation, a and emotional eating consultation, where I really help you to get deeper into and find out what has prevented you in the past of overcoming that, and give you really actionable steps on going forward on your journey to end emotional eating. And I have a few spots available, so there is an application process, but I would love to share that as well.
Okay, excellent. We will share the link with our viewers and listeners. So, Andrea, thank you so much. So, any parting words for people, whether they're on the fence as to what their emotional eating state is, or if they're having a tough time, or anyone else for that matter?
I would say that everybody deserves and is able to be happy and to overcome emotional eating, or self-sabotage or self-doubts or whatever it is. I mean, we all deserve it. And I believe really often women, men too, but very often women, I see, they put too much stress on themselves. So putting yourself first as something I think is very important. And everybody is able to overcome it, but it is really that you need to look from a personalized perspective on what are the root causes so you can actually overcome them.
Excellent. I love that. Andrea Caprio, thank you so much for being here on Food Experience Unplugged. It's been a pleasure.
Michelle, thank you so much for having me. It's really, I love talking with you and I love what you're doing. I mean, I just wish I could jump over and we can cook together or so, but I absolutely love your passion for what you're doing. Thanks so much for having me and thank you for listening.